Self-limiting beliefs are so hard to identify because we see them as just something that is. So he'd go into the world with that self-limiting belief of that, and then your whole world is shaped by that. So yeah, we want those inner beliefs to be strong and of worthiness.
Was that one of the things that you really had to figure out, was like the fact that we've been programmed to not trust ourselves, to be so disconnected from our own intuition, just from like all the times that we were made to be compliant and learn to turn off to what felt right for us?
Emotionally unavailable.
Hi, welcome to Emotionally Unavailable. This is truly a show about me and my journey. When I started Emotionally Unavailable, I thought I was just learning how to be more vulnerable. But somewhere along the way, vulnerability became transformation, emotional, spiritual, human. Every guest I've spoken with has been a mirror, a teacher, a reflection of something I was meant to see. These conversations aren't interviews, they're energy exchanges. I'm not here as an expert, I'm here as a student of life. And together, we're learning what it really means to open our hearts, to show up honestly, and to find connection in the spaces we once hid from. The journey back to ourselves starts here. Hey everybody, happy Friday. I hope you are all doing well. I'm going to make this as quick as possible because I have a little band concert to head to for my sissy poo. Today's guest is Holli Howard. She's a trauma-informed life coach, gentle guide, and founder of Positive Living Coaching. She helps women who have experienced childhood trauma overcome emotional numbness and low self-worth so they can build emotional freedom, reconnect with themselves, and live with greater confidence and joy. Her warm, solution-focused approach is rooted in self-awareness, kindness, and the power of perspective. Couple of things. I'm going to give a sensitive content warning for SA. It is only very, 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 very briefly mentioned. I don't think that it will be very triggering, except for that, like, if it was just brought up out of the blue, possibly it could be, because it was brought up under the context of, like, an uncovered memory. I'm not always great about giving you the sensitive content warnings, but there you go. The other thing is kind of sucky. First of all, we gabbed before I hit record because I was just having so much fun with her. And then we had tech issues because why? Mercury. He was being a little poop. So the episode's only like 38 minutes long. So I'm kind of bummed about that. I think we're going to have Holli back so that we can vibe some more. But I will make sure. Let's see. I'm going to have to go find her links now because I can't remember. But I'll make sure whatever I can find will be included in the show notes. So there you go. I love you guys. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. I hope your Friday is fabulous. And I guess that's all. Here's me and Holli.
Emotionally unavailable.
Okay, well, I've had so much fun with you already. It's really nice to meet you. All right, so you are a positive living coach? Is that
Yes.
okay?
Positive living coaching is my business.
Okay,
And
because I was like, "Crap, how do you say it?" Because I went to your
yeah,
website too to look at it, but then I, blanked on the way you refer to yourself. But
yeah.
I have so many questions for you because I read what you wrote in the Calendly thing. Um, I'm kinda
I'm
glad I
excited to
have
talk
that
about
there.
that.
I it just makes you have a question there, and it was a default, so I kinda hate when people like, I've had people spend a lot of time there, and I'm like, "Oh, I feel bad that you wrote so much." But it really helped me because I was like, "Oh, wow, like, between your website and what you put on that, I was like, wow, we really do have a lot in common." But I
Yeah.
think we have, like, a lot in common, like, in terms of life stories, like, I have a feeling that you are on the same path I am, where you went through stuff, you figured it out, and now you're passionate
Yeah.
about sharing that figure it out part to
Yes.
others.
Yes. Yeah,
So can we
absolutely.
start with well, let's just jump right in. Happy Friday. Can you tell me about your childhood?
Yeah. So, absolutely. So, it's interesting because I didn't really understand the stuff in my childhood until I was 23.
Mhm.
I was very blessed. The one thing that I am just so grateful for is I had a very loving mother. I have a very loving mother. And I think that one of the things that I thought about when I kinda uncovered and unpacked my trauma was I did have that loving mother that supported me, that had that unconditional love that I could talk to about anything. I don't think I always practiced it, but I
Sure.
could. And one of the things that I realized, and I'll talk more about the trauma bits, but I realized that I had that support and still all of this stuff impacted me as deeply as it impacted me. What about the people that don't have that? And or people that don't feel that? Because I think most of the time it is there, but whether we feel it or not is an
Yeah.
important component. So, I had overall a very good childhood as far as the big traumas go. I had the divorced parents, and alcoholic father, and then I had 2 incidents of sexual abuse.
Okay.
And one of them happened when I was 3, and because I was 3 when that happened, I feel like my self-worth was crushed at 3.
Okay.
My 1st grade, reports, you get all the little reports. It always said, "She's so quiet, you can't hear her talk, she's just quiet as a
Well,
mouse."
you really
And I
did just
remember
internalize everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I remember feeling so much of that insecurity growing up and having those doubts in my mind. The other thing that I realized, I call them big, and then I quote, air quote, the little traumas, because the big traumas, as we both are very aware of ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. And yes, I do have a score on that, but it was also the little traumas that happened, and even with the great mom, there was still a lot of other things that happened, and especially, I know I did listen to a couple of your podcasts, not only on yours, but where you were a guest, and I forget which one you were talking about, but like classroom settings
Mhm.
where you get those little traumas that you just internalize. So I didn't have my voice. I eventually that came out, the voice came out, but not a secure knowing my self-worth voice.
Yeah.
And so much of the stuff I just repressed, it was controlling me, but I had no idea it was all those subconscious tendencies that were going on. And it wasn't until I was 23 when I was in a very safe spot because I was actually on the phone with somebody, and they said something where everything clicked of, "Wow, that did happen to me," and I was talking about the big traumas at that point that
Yeah.
really I had repressed. But that did happen to me, and it did impact me, and that started my healing journey.
Wow. And I hope you understand how I mean this, but I feel like you're so lucky that it started at 23.
Yeah.
like 'cause I was 43 smack dab in a mental health crisis. I'd not to minimize your experience at all. I know that sounds terrible, but I'm like, "Oh my god, good for you." I'm so
Yeah.
glad you started getting information so young
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah, you know what's interesting is that my first sexual abuse was around 3 as well,
Mhm.
and, because I spent so much time questioning whether or not that was real because I was
Mm.
so young,
Yeah.
um, but I knew it was because I knew it was such a recurrent memory, and
Yeah.
it felt like a recurring dream because I remembered it so much
Yeah.
in young childhood. But I didn't talk about it. And then when I had a second sexual abuse, I told my mom. I was only like 5 then. And again, both of these happened
Mhm.
because she left me with people she should not have left me with. But the
Mhm.
second one, I told her and she was really messed up on something, I don't know what. But it was I think this was an adolescent, if I were to guess, because
Mhm.
we were left alone and it happened, and he was supposed to be staying with us while she was wherever she was, and then I remember going to find him in the neighborhood to be like, "You're gonna leave us alone?" And he was playing football with his friends. So I think he was young. Of course, he
Mhm.
seemed much older than me because I was 5, but
Yeah.
so I told her, and she made a joke about it. Like, she saw him walking down the street
Mm.
like, "Oh, you like touching little girls," or something like that. I don't remember. But immediately, I remember being like, "We don't tell our shit to people." Like, that's it. Like, I'm never telling again. And then I tried to gingerly bring both incidences up again later, and I wasn't believed. So, like, they really thought I was that attention seeking.
Life doesn't pause when you're sick. Vaccines against respiratory illnesses can help protect you and give you more playtime with your best friend. Depending on age and health status, vaccinations for flu, COVID-19, RSV, or pneumococcal infection may be recommended. Vaccines can help keep you from having a rough time. Learn more at cveep.org/vaccines-protect. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and CVEEP, fighting infectious respiratory disease.
Of a human that I would just make things up. So,
Yeah.
but
Ugh.
anyway, I'm sorry to get all into that.
No.
But what it made me think is it's weird because I always felt kind of lucky that I didn't blame myself for those events, or
Good.
that
Yeah.
in a very conscious way, I didn't feel gross about any of it. I didn't wanna talk about it because I didn't
Mhm.
want people to feel sorry for me, because that was a thing that became a very real protective factor for me was, well, I don't need pity or shame, so, like, I'm not telling anybody anything because they don't get it and they make too big of a deal about it, because they care and I'm uncomfortable with it. Like, literally, Holly, this is something I've just, like, really gotten a grasp on recently, is that, like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable with people showing me compassion because I didn't know how to do that for myself. And so I started to think about when that started. Oh, so young, so young. Like, don't
Yeah.
pity me. But really, it was just like, you're going to make me feel really raw, and I don't know how to deal with that. Anyways,
Yeah.
sorry. So,
Well, that's okay
okay. So,
because it's their
first
survival
of all, thank
strategy.
you for not
Yeah.
minimalizing your quote unquote little t traumas.
So yeah, the quote unquote little T traumas are they are just as impactful. It's not necessarily
Hmm.
what happens, it's how it impacts us, and it's just as impactful. I think that's where we learn our inner critic, and that's where we learn so many of these innate qualities. The survival strategies clearly happen with the big traumas, but they also happen with those little T traumas because we're just doing the best we can. You had said something in one of the podcasts about how we're just doing the best we can as a child because our parents don't always learn. They're not taught all of the
Hmm.
how to co-regulate and how to sit with us through those big pivotal moments. And that's just so impactful because I think that's where a lot of the ongoing trauma happens and cycles happen that create that inner critic, that create that self-doubt when we finally get into adulthood.
Parents didn't have the skills to meet us at our emotional developmental milestones.
Right. Right.
Yes,
And
and
that's
if you're taught through the programming of, like, walk it off or be a big girl, just these really well-meaning, a lot of times, phrases
right.
that are given out.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I love when people say, "On paper, my childhood was kinda normal." I love that because I don't want, anyone to compare their stories to mine and think they shouldn't have a right to their, feelings about their experiences, but also, it truly is in those little moments where we were left to figure something out by ourselves, and all of us seem to have the same narratives, all of us.
Right,
We're all
right.
walking around feeling the weight of the world on our shoulders and feeling like nobody's gonna help us carry it. We feel
Yeah,
too much and not enough. We feel
yeah,
fundamentally at our core unlovable, and sometimes
yeah,
like a fundamental fuck up. I mean,
yeah,
I know
yeah.
I had both of those. It took a long time to
Mhm.
uncover them, but why do we hate ourselves? Why are all of us walking around hating ourselves without even knowing it? And our experiences on the outside look so different. And I think it's
Yeah,
part of it is just the human condition.
yeah, and you bring up such a good point because I think more often than not, and almost all of the time, that the stuff that happens is unintentional.
Yeah.
And the stuff that almost feels like it's intentional, some of them are just completely unintentional. Again, okay, put your big girl pants on, all of
Yes.
that stuff. That was stuff that they thought was going to help, and don't be emotional, shove your emotions down. They're not saying that final part, but that
Right.
type
Well,
of
they kind of are when they're
mhm.
like, "Be brave."
Be brave. Yeah, that's their underlying message, is that.
Yeah.
And they're not meaning to, that's completely unintentional. It's what they're thinking is gonna help, but it's not. Well, I got this stuff to deal with, so you need to just do that.
Mhm.
But then even the bigger traumas and the things that feel intentional, like how can it not be intentional when
Right.
certain people do stuff? But that's their unhealed trauma.
Mhm.
That's their stuff spilling out onto other people. And that's why healed trauma is so important. And it's not like healed. It's working on healing. It's learning to come with compassion. It's learning to stop being so critical and judgmental. And it's
Yes.
really owning our stuff so we can show up not only for ourselves. I'm a big proponent on how we show up for ourselves, but when we show up for ourselves, we also, the result is how we show up for other people.
Oh, absolutely. You know, what I thought of earlier when you were talking about kinda how you showed up in your school life so
Mm.
young, I even though on the outside I probably didn't present the way you were because I was little Miss Chatty Cathy with my Gemini ass.
Mhm.
Um, inside, I felt that same thing, bracing, contracted in, like scared of people and just scared of never being loved. I mean, that
Yeah.
I would never be what somebody, anybody would deem as worthy enough to spend time
Mhm.
with or to have friendship with. Like I spent so many years, especially in early childhood, just trying so hard to be whatever it was that would make you be nice to me. Like, just play with me, talk
Mhm.
with me, like, give me some
Yeah.
companionship, you know? And
Yeah.
I really took that on in adolescence. I dropped some of it after my dad died because it was like, man, none of this shit matters. But
Oh, yeah.
it was still very much a part of who I was. And then in adulthood,
Mhm.
like, I'm just carrying all this shame because I can't be what I feel like people want or need from me. So, yeah, like we even looked different in our schooling experiences,
Mhm.
but like I know inside that's how I felt, just very
Yeah.
withdrawn.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought that I was the only one that kinda had these crazy thoughts, and you realize, no, it's so much, and shame does not do anything for us.
Nothing.
If we can change that shame to compassion and really look, we do so much assessing of things as an adult, thinking of, like, what we should have done or could have done, but if
Yes.
you go look at a three-year-old child, like, what could we have done? We were
Right.
that three-year-old little child.
Mhm.
So that
Yes,
that
and I was just
yeah.
talking to a client about this last week at the end of a session about her, like, 7-year-old daughter, and she was expressing some concern that her 7-year-old doesn't have a lot of empathy for her sibling, and I said, "Well, that's developmentally appropriate, first of all, but she's not going to be able to extend compassion to someone else at a higher level than she's able to extend to herself. So,
Yeah.
if you start teaching her about compassion for herself, the natural byproduct of that will be compassion for others. And when I learned that that is why I had no compassion for a lot of people. People have
Yeah.
always told me, like, "You have a big heart," and whatever. It never felt real. Like, I was like, "You don't know me," because I'm actually I listened to my grandma who said I had, like, a mean heart, and so I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, yeah, you don't know me." And, I mean, listen, sometimes I was real bitchy to people, so I that was the part I carried so much shame over, and so I was like, "No, I'm not a good person." But when I stopped to be like, "Oh, I was judging all of them because I was judging me," and then just the natural ability
Oh,
to be like, "No, they're human too," and that's just the humanness, like, I've made so much peace in the last 6 months with my grandma who was my primary caregiver most of my
mhm.
childhood, because she was just she had, like, tons of narcissistic traits. She was not nice. And while I was the golden child, I still had every bit as much of, the BS that my siblings did, and just the expectations and the never being enough and, all of the things.
Right.
But I really had like, it just one day it just hit me like, well, she went through all of the same stuff and maybe more than I did, and I'm loving your cat, by the way.
Yeah.
And I
Come
love
to
when
join
animals
us.
show up, it makes me so happy. But how can I not have compassion for her experience? And honestly, her parenting experience was, like, far worse than mine too. Like, she went through 2 rounds of kids, and that 1st round, she had an abusive husband, a philandering husband. She was a baby when she got pregnant with that 1st one. She was 15 years old,
Wow.
ran away from a state, falsified a marriage license to marry him at 15. So,
Wow.
like, that yeah, I can have compassion for that, but I wasn't able to until I extended it to myself first.
Right. Right. And that's such a good point. I'm glad you're having that conversation with that friend of yours because I think that's so important. And I wish one of the things, I have missions in this world, and one of them is to really start this communication younger.
Mhm.
Because imagine, like, look at what you said about me being great that I started at 23 instead of 43. And, I know that there was other stuff happening in between, but imagine if we can teach this at 5,
Right.
to and at right before 5 in the home and really understanding it. I do have, one tool that I learned. I did used to focus a little bit more on the parenting
Mhm.
because raising emotionally healthy children is one of my main missions as well.
Yeah.
And one of the techniques that I had learned was it was when somebody was pregnant with their second child, and maybe that first child was feeling a little certain way about, "Oh, you're not gonna love me," and maybe this is some residual stuff that this little girl is feeling, but the instructor taught us take a candle, have a candle lit, and says, "This is the amount of love I have for you. My love is strong and it's full." And by having your little baby brother or sister, whatever it is, it's not gonna diminish, and look, and they light the second candle, and then the flames are just as strong.
Yeah.
So it
I
shows
love
my
that.
heart loves both of you equally as much. And maybe that, if there's any jealousy type stuff happening, maybe that'll help show that little girl as part of that teaching point for compassion.
Yes. Yeah, and I think well, you know what I think too as parents, what I learned after going through, like, some real healing for myself was how much I was parenting from a place of fear and my own shame. So everything they did triggered either or both of my fear and
Mhm.
shame, and that is what would dictate how I responded. It wasn't
Yeah.
until I got very conscious about if you cannot say something that doesn't have shit to do with you, shut up. Like, I would just
Yeah.
leave it until I could say something not shameful and not fear-based because that's all it was, and I started to think back about all the people who had ever hurt me with, like, words like that, and I was like, "Okay, A, I now know why they said stuff like that, and so, like, I'm not gonna be mad at them anymore, I can let that go, but
Mm.
B, like, I don't wanna be that." So, I really
Um,
want I have to say, "Okay, that's my fear or my shame talking. What am I actually wanting them to get from this
right.
conversation?" And then that's what I say, is like,
Right.
"Well, that really sucks that that happened." Like, 'cause like, my middle kid, he gets himself into some real sticky situations. He's gotten a couple of wrecks, whatever. And the thing that I've realized is, like, I could say a lot more than I do, but it's like, well, that's the middle part where I'm just saying stuff because 'cause I'm stressed, and I'm just gonna have to take that back in a couple weeks whenever we're on the other side of the stress. So let's
Yeah.
skip the middle. Let's just skip the
Yeah.
middle. And, like, he was very apologetic that second one because we had just had a conversation about, like, "I understand that you think I don't know what I'm talking about, but now that you've had one, I'm gonna need you to sit and listen to my instructions
Yeah.
about how you should be doing things on the road." He's 18 now, but he got into this the second fender bender. He was the 5th car in a 5-car pileup,
Oh.
and he was so upset, and he's like, "I'm so sorry. I know that we just had that conversation 2 days ago." What
Mm.
is that a good time to be like, "We sure the hell did." You know?
Right.
Like, No, I was like, "Hey, these things happen, you know,
Yeah,
I'm a little stressed," is what I said. "I'm a little
yeah,
stressed,
yeah,
but I know it always works out eventually, so let's just get to that point. Are you okay?" Because
yeah.
I wanna show up in the way that I just wish that people had shown up for me.
Yeah, and look, he's already learning. He was already processing and talking about that initial conversation. So he is letting
Exactly.
it in, and then it's him forming his own beliefs about it that's gonna make it stick for him.
Yeah, and not beliefs that are programmed from a center of, "I'm just a giant idiot loser who doesn't listen, and I have too big of an ego." He has learned that his ego is a little too big, through some, like, second-degree sunburns, all kinds of stuff, but, like, that doesn't take me saying, "You're an idiot," for him to, like, learn something, and I
Right.
feel like that our fear, it's kinda like, "Be brave, be a big girl." That's from our own fear and our own shame because we're all, like, afraid that we're gonna have some, like, 35-year-old living in our basement that refuses to work and can't support themselves. That seems to be the overall fear that parents have, and I'm like, "Yeah, well, I think it's a faster out likelihood of that outcome if you belittle them and make them feel like they can't trust themselves to figure life
Absolutely.
out," you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, because that's gonna be how they show up in the world. All of this inner voice and these inner beliefs that we're not even in touch with, that is how we show up.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
oh, I was just gonna say there's a saying that I learned a long time ago that I just love. Self-limiting beliefs are so hard to identify because we see them as just something that is. So he'd go into the world with that
mhm.
self-limiting belief of that, and then your whole world is shaped by that. So, yeah, we want those inner beliefs to be strong and of worthiness.
Yeah, and do you in your work or even in yourself, was that one of the things that you really had to figure out was, like, the fact that we've been programmed to not trust ourselves, to be so disconnected from our own intuition, just from, like, all the times that we were made to be compliant and learn to turn off to what felt right for us?
Yeah, through it all, it's interesting because I'm trying to think of a pinpointed time that happened, and I don't think there was a pinpointed time. I talked about starting my healing journey at 23, and I feel like I got through that one layer of the onion,
Yeah.
and then it was through multiple different layers and heck, there's probably still more layers under there.
Sure.
It's probably still gonna come up. It happens. But I don't know exactly when I pinpointed how much. I do know at 23 I realized how much those subconscious. Mine was a repressed memory, and I know you talked about kind of talking about it when you were a child. I never talked about it.
Mm.
I once I remembered, I did realize that I always knew, which is an
Yeah.
interesting point about repressed memories. And not only did I realize I already knew, but, like, I remembered points in time when it came up in my brain, and then I shoved it back down.
Mhm.
And so I lived my life with it as a repressed memory, even though I had glimpses of it throughout. And that's why I kinda said, wow, that did happen and it did impact me because I had, those bits of and pieces of memory.
Yeah.
Um, so I know just how strong subconscious tendencies I had,
Yeah.
and it was of complete the shame, the insecurities, everything that, we manifest our reality. So the stuff that I was afraid of, I just made it worse,
Yeah.
stiffening up if someone comes near me and just not feeling safe and those different things. So I guess it might have started to get uncovered at that 23, but even recently, I just started yoga again back in March. I've done it periodically throughout my life, but I remember walking into a yoga class saying, I'm not strong. We were going to do something with upper body work, and I'm just like,
Oh.
oh, I'm just not, or and my core, I think it was, but I just said, I'm a little bit nervous about today because I'm not strong. And then I sat in the yoga class, and I don't know why my light just went off.
On
Um,
Mercury?
Um, but the yoga teacher talked in our class about setting your intention and how we, the voices that we talk to ourselves about. And I just said, I just put out there, I'm not strong. I'm like, no, I need to change that. I am getting stronger. I was going to
Ooh,
that yoga
yeah.
class. I'm getting stronger. So that's how I've changed that tune. And this is, I've done this work. I talk about this work, and yet I'm still, oh, I'm not strong. So it's really realizing how these words shape us and impact us and
Yeah.
changing them to those more. And I didn't critique myself. That's the one thing that has helped, since I've been on this healing journey. I didn't kick myself when I was down and say, "Oh, I was so stupid for saying that," and all the stuff that I used to say and spiral
Right.
into that negative system. I've now grown, okay, just have awareness of it, have the compassion of it, shift it, and I'm so grateful that I've gotten there because it's helped me a lot in my adulthood.
Well, and that's the thing that I'm still all the time kind of like, I haven't had an aha yet, like, where it just is a full
Mhm.
body resonate, but I keep seeing these glimpses of the way I have confirmed my bias, like, the negativity
Confirmation
bias, the
bias.
way a subconscious belief was formed to protect me, and then all the things I do to confirm it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
And
annoying, but I'm still
yeah.
finding ways all the time where I'm like, "Oh, that's probably not true," but I was very self-righteous in a lot of those truths before.
Mhm.
Like, "No,
Mhm.
that's just my boundary," or whatever, and then I
Yeah.
find out, like, "No, honey, you're just lying to protect yourself," and this is
Yeah.
what I see too in the avoidance arena is and why I believe we're all avoidant to a certain extent, is that, like, oh, if you have a preconditioned belief that you're not strong, you may not even start yoga. But if you do, you don't have to really put your all into it and maybe fail or whatever the fear is, because you already knew you weren't strong. So, whatever, you're not going to have to feel any sort of like pain over it because you already gave up before you started. And
Yeah.
that's where I've
And
noticed I do
yeah.
that all the time.
Yeah. And then that confirms, see,
Yeah, yeah, I knew
yeah,
I
I
wasn't
was right.
strong. That's fine, I guess.
Yeah.
And, if you hadn't shifted your thinking in that intentional moment, perhaps you wouldn't have stuck with yoga.
Very true. That's a very good point. Every time I go in there, I'd be focusing on, "Oh my gosh, I'm not strong. This is so hard," instead
Mhm.
of, "I'm getting stronger."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Well, and
think
I'm
that's
getting stronger gives so much leeway
yeah,
for growth instead of some fixed
so true.
mindset.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's why really being able to identify my program, the very first thing is awareness. And it's not awareness to relive the past. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. We talk about, now and future. But I also do shine a light on that awareness. We don't have to necessarily remember where it came from and know
Right.
specifically where it came from, but if we can at least identify, all right, this came from somewhere. I maybe have an idea of it, but it came from somewhere. I'm not just, crazy, which I don't like using that word, but that's what
But
I thought
yeah,
of
that's
myself
the
for a
way we
long
call
time.
ourselves. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So having that awareness and then really seeing the echoes of impact in our current life.
Mhm.
How is that belief now impacting me now? And those key awareness, that it's the foundation of how I start, because without that, we're just kind of staying stuck in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I love that you're highlighting like you don't have to be able to pinpoint exactly where it came from. There is
Yeah.
work down the road that you can do even on your own to go there if
Mhm.
you'd like to, but it's not necessary to begin to
Right.
just start understanding and unraveling all of the lies you've told yourself through that programming. I mean, if you think about how much I'm not gonna pretend to remember the numbers of science, but, like, very little amount stays in our conscious and the rest
Mhm.
goes into our subconscious, and you're taking
Yeah.
in information with every breath that you take. So, all of our little brains back way back when said, "Oh, you know what? This is the way I'm going to interpret that information, and that is now the God's honest truth that shall
Yeah.
rule my conscience until I
Yeah.
decide it won't."
Right. Right. And that's such a good point of like deciding because we really do have to decide that we're going to change
Mhm.
it. It doesn't, things don't have to be aligned to decide to change it. Just having that
That's
desire
right.
means you're ready.
Mhm. That's
So, and then,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
And then finding
That's
somebody
such
to
a good
work
point.
with. Yeah. Finding someone to work with, I think, is such a big component. People can definitely do it on their own. I know I'm an introvert and I do a lot of stuff on my own. Um, but with certain things, really healing in relationships and having somebody that can
Mhm.
really bounce your stuff off of. I am not the expert in my coaching sessions. They are the expert of themselves. And it's just pulling out some things with them so help
Yeah.
them identify and make those connections and realize, okay, that inner critic, no, that's not me. That belittling thing, that all of the those limiting beliefs, they finally get a light shined on them and they can start to say, okay, that isn't my voice. And I always think, who were we before all that crap started
Mhm.
piling upon us? You know,
Yes.
let's reconnect to
Yeah,
that.
that's why I love the idea that, like, we're not trying to change everything about ourselves. We're trying to come home to ourselves, embody what we're trying to learn, get stop being so disconnected from yourself, and then
Yeah.
embrace every last thing about you. Whether you think it's
Yeah.
your worst flaw or best characteristic or
Yeah.
whatever, it's all you and it's
Yeah.
all magic and it all has a function.
Absolutely.
So,
Uh-huh.
like, go with the flow. Don't try
Yeah.
to change everything. I remember thinking that. I remember thinking everything about myself had to change for me to be worthy, you know?
Yeah. I so get that. And one of the things that I often talk about is some of our trauma responses might be kinda who we are, but we might be okay with it.
Mhm.
Like, I just I'm single, I like being single, I don't want a relationship, I have a lot of friends, I have a very full life. Is that a part of my trauma response? It might be, but I'm very comfortable that way because
Mhm.
I have so much other stuff that I'm focusing on. Will it be forever? I don't know. But that is something I'm not going to shame and blame myself and think like that because it's something I enjoy and I want. So again, if it's a trauma response, I'm okay with it. But then the self-doubt that creeps in, that had crept into every
Right.
aspect of my life, I wasn't okay with that. Those are just not good feelings. And will that self-doubt still creep up sometimes once we're on that healing path? Of course, but it's how we
Yeah.
handle that kinda that mitigates the intensity of it, and that's what I wasn't okay about, and those were the things that I really
Mhm.
needed to work on, that inner critic and all of that stuff. So what you find you're not happy with in your life, if there's anything you're unsatisfied in with your life, I think that's the place to start looking, for what you wanna change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. Well, Holly,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for all of the tech issues today. I've loved
No way.
having you.
Yeah.
Tell us where we can find you.
So my website is positivelivingcoaching.com. And that has I have some courses in it, my coaching program on how the coaching program is more of a book a call with me because I really wanna make sure we're a good fit.
Yeah.
But both of those are on there. I also have a weekly, email that I send out that just has its positive living perspectives, and you can also get to it on the positivelivingcoaching.com website. And then
So
I do
anybody
have
can sign up for that for your email
anybody
list?
can sign up for it. Yep, it's
Okay.
right on my homepage, and there's a little free gift that goes with it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I love
and then I'm
signing up for
on
emails.
yay! Then I'm on, Facebook and Instagram, both with Positive Living Coaching.
Okay, cool. I'll follow you there too. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I feel like you wrapped it up really beautifully, but is there anything that you feel like you didn't get a chance to say?
Just the fact that we're all worthy of this. We're all worthy of healing. We all we don't need to carry the weight of the past. We can let it go. Our future does not have to be dictated by our past. Is our past always going to be a part of us? Yes. But we can reframe and really take the lessons and then show up how we are authentic to ourselves and how we want to be. So, and
Yes,
everybody deserves it.
you're so right. Oh, I love that. Great
Mhm.
parting words. Okay, I'm going to push stop if you'll hang out for just a sec.
Sure.
Hey, make sure you've given the show a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to if you haven't already. And check out my website, empoweredwithmelisahepner.org, or my link tree on Instagram at melissa.hepner to check out my latest offers or workshops. All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
INDEPE and cut.